Story of former President Woodrow Wilson. He wrote this story. I want to read this to you. This is what he said. I was in a barber shop, sitting in a chair, when I became aware that a personality had entered the room. A man had come quietly in upon the same errand as myself and sat in the chair next to me. Every word he uttered, though it was not in the least didactic, showed a personal interest in the man who was serving him. And before I got through with what was being done for me, I was aware that I had attended an evangelistic service because Mr. Moody was in the next chair, referring to Dwight L. Moody, the evangelist. I purposely lingered in the room after he had left and noted the singular effect his visit had upon the barbers in that shop. They talked in undertones. They did not know his name, but they knew something had elevated their thoughts. And I felt that I left that place as I should have left a place of worship. Now, how many of you have that effect on people? You visit a place, you go to the office, and you leave that place, and somehow you have encouraged them, you have elevated their thoughts. Perhaps their hearts are burning with what you have said, something you did, and perhaps you have encouraged them to the point that they would want to know God more. How many of you can honestly say you have that effect on people? I don't want, I'm not asking you to raise your hands, but just to examine yourself. Now, this is Dwight L. Moody, is one of the famous evangelists many years ago. And Woodrow Wilson himself said that the effect he leaves on people, their thoughts are elevated, their hearts are burning within themselves. And you can argue and say, that is Dwight L. Moody. I'm just a simple guy. But did you know that the purpose that God has put us here on earth is to be an influence on the unbelieving world? Because the world, as you can see it, and as the Bible tells us, is dying. It is decaying. And our role is to influence this world as much as we can. So the question this morning is this: are we influencing the world? Because Jesus said, and I want all of us to read this together. This is what he said. Before the anniversary series messages, we were talking about what series? Remember that series? Legit series? Legit happiness, right? And we were talking about the Beatitudes, right? And Jesus was saying, if you follow these principles, these 8 principles, you will be blessed. You will be happy. But you know what? While he was sharing that to his disciples, he is saying these characters you need to demonstrate or live out in your life. And as you live them out, you will have so much effect on the people that you are talking to that they will be left blessed, that they will see their hearts burning, that their thoughts are elevated because they saw these qualities in you. You are poor in spirit. You are merciful. So let's read this together. After Jesus said the Beatitudes, this is what he said. This is what he said. Let's read this together. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. Forgive me, I think the letters are not so visible. But let me read it again. Let me read it for you. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. And in verse 14, this is what he said. You are the light of the world. Let's read this together. A city set on a hill. It cannot be hidden. Jesus is talking about influence. Jesus is talking about how you and I can affect the world. You demonstrate the Beatitudes. You demonstrate it to a dying and decaying world. And you become salt and you become light. Remember, legit happiness, our series before, the 8 Beatitudes. This is what he said. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted. And we even dared say that these are the formulas for happiness. But this principles will not be appreciated by the people of the world. The only people who will appreciate these principles are the children of God. That's why Jesus was talking to the disciples. These principles are reserved for the disciples of Jesus. And if you practice this, Jesus is saying, you will be happy, you will be blessed. The word Beatitudes is from the Latin word beatus, meaning blessed. And those who have these characters, who live it out, they will become salt. They will become light. You will have so much effect on a dying and decaying world that you would leave them. When you leave the room, their thoughts are elevated, their hearts are burning within themselves, they'll be encouraged to know Jesus more. So let me ask you again the question, do you have that effect on people? You are salt, you are light. You know, today, we don't appreciate salt. Sometimes we don't appreciate light. The only time we appreciate light, pag may brown out. Right? Pag may brown out, anong una mong ginagawa? Di ba? What's the first thing you do? For me, I look for the flashlight. You appreciate light. So what does that imply? When the world is dark, when your office is dark, I'm not talking about literal darkness, okay? I hope you understand. When I say dark, the values are dark. When the school is dark, the question is, where's the light? Because we need light. We don't appreciate salt today, right? We only use salt when we're eating, di ba? Please pass the salt. Di ba? Pahingin minsan mayroon pang suka, tsaka toyo. Di ba? But did you know that during the time of Jesus, before the industrialization of the world, salt was an important and precious commodity. Did you know that? Today we don't appreciate it. Kasi ginagamit natin sa pagkain. Salt was so precious that wars have been fought over salt. Can you imagine? May mga gera noong araw. Ang pinag-aawayan nila, asin. What do you receive every 15th and 30th? Sueldo. In English, salary. It comes from the Latin word salarium. The root word is sal, meaning salt. You know why? Because during the Roman times, the Roman soldiers received money for salt. During times of war, when there is no money, you know how they pay the soldiers? They pay them with salt. Because salt during that time was a precious and valuable commodity. We don't appreciate it today because we are industrialized. We don't appreciate it today because we have refrigeration. Right? I remember during the time of a typhoon, I think it was Milenio, tama ba yun? There was, I think, 5 days of no electricity. Do you remember that time? I'm not sure if that's the correct typhoon, but there was a typhoon, I think, with 5 or more than 5 days, no electricity. You know what happened to us? All the meat in our freezer, what happened? They got rotten. Wala na. Tinapon mo na. Ang baho na nga, di ba? Kasi 5 days, no electricity. What are you gonna do? During the time of Jesus, because there was no refrigeration, salt was used to preserve rotting meat. That's why people fight over salt. It was a necessary daily part of life. There was no refrigeration, so they rub the meat. For example, they catch fish in the ocean, they rub it with salt or put it under salt so that it can to retard the decay of the fish. So what does that imply? You are the salt of the earth. Meaning, in your office, you retard the decay of the office. Okay, not literal decay. Moral decadence, moral decay. You see, we cannot prevent the world from decaying. It will happen. Eventually, fish put in salt will rot. It will not last forever unless it's refrigerated, all right? It's frozen. But eventually it will rot. But it retards its decay. So by implication, when you are in the world, you retard the decay of a dying world because you are there. So let me ask you, are you the salt of the earth? Some Christians are like the suka of the earth. They don't, when they don't People are not elevated in their thoughts when you are there. People are not inspired when you are there. In fact, when you are there, gusto nila sipain kayo. Di ba? Imbis na ma-inspire sila, naiinis sila sa'yo. So in the opposite, you are not the salt of the world. You are the suka of the world. Sinusuka ka ng mga taong nang kasama mo sa opisina. Sinusuka ka sa pamilya, di ba? So now, our message this morning is this. Live God's purpose, be salt and light. Can we say this together? Live God's purpose, be salt and light. And now, as I mentioned earlier, what are the uses of salt? Salt, during that time, is used as a preservative. All right? It's a preservative. To deter the decay of meat. There was no refrigeration during that time. Roman soldiers were paid with salt. That's why the term, do you remember the term? Or have you heard of this term? You are worth one salt. Have you heard of that term? Because during the Roman times, it is valuable. If you are not doing your job, you're not worth salt. That is the term that you hear during that time. It came from that time. Okay? It is used as antiseptic during that time. Pag may sugat ka, they put salt. Ang sakit, ano? Mas mo, lagyan ng asin yung sugat mo. Kasi wala pang betadine noong araw. Praise God for betadine. Imagine, if you're living during that time, you have a sugat, they put salt. Aray, attack it, di ba? It's an antiseptic. But this is what we like about salt today. It's for flavoring, right? It's for flavoring. You put salt, di ba? Pag may itlog, kakain ka ng hard-boiled egg, di ba? Kailangan may asin. Di ba? Hindi masarap kumain ng itlog pag walang asin. That's why it's used for flavoring. So in the same manner, when you are in the world, you make a difference. People taste it. They savor it when they experience you. You make a difference in the workplace. And sometimes when you are in the workplace, when you're absent from the workplace, they feel your absence. Because you are so different. When you go into that room or in the office, you light up that room. You are an encourager. And that's why when you are absent, they feel the loss. They long for you to be there. I hope that's the case, di ba? Or perhaps when you're absent, nag-rejoice sila. Buti na lang absent, di ba? Yun ang suka. But the idea is you add flavor to the lives of the world. And salt is used to create thirst. You know, they say when you have too much salt in the body, you become thirsty. So we're going to look at all of these things. And just to give you an idea, the framework of the message this morning is there are 4 things we need to discuss. One is the presupposition. Second is the plan. Third is the problem. And fourth is the purpose. Okay, what is the presupposition? The presupposition is this. I already mentioned it actually. I'm going to read Matthew chapter 5:13. But Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. So what is the presupposition? The presupposition is this. The world is decaying. That's why it needs salt. The world is dark. That's why it needs light. That is the presupposition. The reason why we are here is because the world is decaying. The world is growing dark. The corruption and the decay has to be retarded. And that's why we are here. In fact, if the Christians are taken out of the world, let's say the rapture happens, implication means the world will really decay immediately. The fact that we are here, we retard its decay. Are you aware of that? That Christians have made an impact in the world. But before that, let's look at this. Is the world getting better? It is not. You know, look at the problems. Suicide. In the 1980s, 500,000. In the 1990s, it rose to 600,000. By 2015, it's 900,000. This is around the world. And of course, many of you know of the problems of depression. Depression is becoming very common among young people, even old people. There is now a term called MDE, major depressive episode. Depression can be short-term. It can be 1 week, 2 weeks only. Dati ang depression, sakit. Di ba? Yung something chemical imbalance. But depression now, there's a new term that they coin, MDE. It can be short-term depression. You can be depressed by 1 week. So I don't know if you have imbalance for 1 week. Maybe there's something wrong. It's not only the chemical imbalance. There's something about this world, and it's decaying, it's getting darker. Look at divorce. 1980s, 500,000. 1990s, 600,000. And in 2015, it's 900,000. Incarceration. Okay, people in jail. Again, 1980s, 500,000. 1990s, almost 1.5 million. Today, or 2015, it's over 2 million. Those with HIV and AIDS. Again, 80s, 8 million. 1990s, 16 million. 2015, 36.7 million. So, if the meat is decaying during the time of Jesus, the question that they ask is this: where is the salt? If it is dark in a room, the question you ask, where is the flashlight? So, if the world is decaying, what's the question? Where is the salt? Where is the Christians? If the world is dark, what is the question? Where is the light? Where is the Christians? What are we doing? And perhaps, if the world is continually decaying, then we are not doing our job. We are not being salt. We are not being light. And later on, Jesus tells a warning. He says a warning. There's a problem. If we lose our saltiness, what did he say? We become worthless, good for nothing, only to be thrown out, to be trampled underfoot by men. We are no longer useful. And that's a warning. I think that's a warning. Look at what's happening to the world. 1/3 of teens have engaged in premarital sex. Teen pregnancy is at 14% among teens aged 15 to 19. AIDS cases grew by 51% this year. The Philippines is only one of only 7 countries where HIV cases have increased. Again, if the meat is decaying, don't blame the meat. You did not get salt. If the world is dark, don't blame the darkness. In other words, don't blame the politicians. Don't blame the government. Don't blame people in authority. If the world is decaying, who do you blame? Sabi nga nila, when you point your finger at somebody, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. So if in the office, it's in decaying. When I say decaying, morally decaying, it's dark. Whose fault is it? Basically, it's our fault. We are not doing our job. We are not retarding the decay. Again, let me make that clear. We will not prevent the decay, but we may retard its decay. We have more education. We have more technology. You know, the wonders of technology today is amazing. Di ba kayo nagugulat? Di ba ako, I'm so amazed, di ba? When I talk to Siri, I'm amazed how this Siri person can understand what I'm saying. Di ba? I never imagined a time that this will happen. Di ba? Kasi pinapod ko sa Star Trek noon, kinakausap yung computer, sumasagot. Si Tony Stark, kinakausap yung suit niya, sumasagot. Si Siri, sumasagot na rin sa akin. So we are heading towards that age. Technologically, we're advancing. But inwardly, morally, we are decaying. It's sad. Like, for example, in the first world countries, like, for example, in Canada today, where gender fluidity or same-sex marriage is so strong. In Canada today, in the public schools, they teach that gender is fluid. Can you imagine? 5 years old, they teach that gender is fluid. They teach the kids, 5 years old. In fact, some Christians say it's abuse, it's child abuse. Tinuturo sa mga bata sa Canada that your gender can be fluid. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Ngayon, kung feel mo boy ka, boy ka. Kung bukas girl, girl ka. Kung sunod na linggo, boy ka ulit, pwede. Ganun na ngayon ang gender, fluid. They teach that in public schools in Canada. And the advocates in Canada are saying, so the Christians in Canada are saying, the parents have the right to allow their children to have the education that they believe is morally right? You know what the Canadian law government is saying? In Canada, children's rights are above parents' rights. That's crazy. That's dangerous. The rights of the children are more than the parents. Ibig sabihin, kung sabihin ng bata, ayoko na kita magulang. Pwede. Hindi pa siguro ano, no? But it may come to that point. I want to divorce my parents. It can happen. Because that's what they're saying. The reason why Canada is, this is a good place, because children's rights are above the parents' rights. So the parents have no say anymore to what the schools are teaching their children. Kaya nga sabi ko sa mga lilipat sa Canada, kung lumipat kayo sa Canada, mali kayo mga anak, mag-homeschool na lang kayo. Di ba? Di ba? If you really believe that, you really believe in God, you want your children to really understand God, get to know God, that's very dangerous. The world is decaying. Technological advancing, but inwardly, morally, we are decaying. So that's the presupposition. The world is decaying, we need salt. The world is dark, we need light. So therefore, we go to the plan. What is the plan? Now let's read this together. This is the plan. Siguro, di ba, if the world is decaying, ganito tayo, di ba? Yung mga business thinkers, this is what we're gonna do. The government, this is what we're gonna do. We go strategic planning. We do a lot of planning. See, Jesus is very simple. You know His plan? This is His plan. Let's read this together. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. He uses the personal pronoun you. And in the original language, it is emphatic in saying you and you alone. So parang si Jaworski yan, di ba? Si Jaworski, remember si Jaworski when he was coaching Ginebra? His famous saying, what did he say? Pag it's 5 seconds to go, less than 5 seconds, and the opposing team is a basket ahead, what does Jaworski say? This is you. You shoot the basket. Nakasalalay sa'yo ang pagkapanalo ng Ginebra. And what is Jesus saying? The plan, the grand plan of retarding the decay of this world is you. So look at your neighbor and say, you are God's plan. Ay, tingnan niyo kayo katabi niyo. Ikaw ang plano ng Diyos. Sa eskwela, sa opisina. So ang tanong, palakita mo yung katabi mo, Lord, wala bang plan B? Ano sabi ni Lord? Wala. No matter how imperfect you are the plan. No plan B. You retard the decay. You are the light of the world. And if you look at history, Christians have impacted the world. Did you know that? If you have lived during the Greek-Roman times, it was barbaric times. Right? It was barbaric times. The fact that Jesus was crucified, it was barbaric. If you're a criminal, you're punished, what do? They really scourge you, they whip you until all the blood comes out of your body, they pierce your body, they put you on the cross until you die. Those were barbaric times. But because of Christianity, the world has changed. That is the meaning of salt and light. Let me give you an example. What are the impact of Christians in the world? Children. Of course, it's getting abused. But did you know, during the Roman times, that the law sided the authorities? For example, in the family, the law sided the fathers. There's a Roman law called patrias potestas. You know what that means? That the father has absolute authority. If there is a child that he doesn't like, he can disown the child. And if the child dies, the law is on the side of the father. That is during the Roman times. So who changed that? When Christianity came into the world, that changed. That is salt, that is light. Women. Di ba? Nababasa natin sa Bible. Di ba? If you read the Old Testament, what was the role of women? Even during the time of Jesus. Alam mo role ng mga babae? Display. Can you imagine if you lived during the Bible time? Di ba remember, during the Persians, si Queen Esther, takot siya kausapin yung asawa niya, yung hari. Bakit? Because she is not allowed to speak to the king. Imagine nyo, gano'n ang sitwasyon nyo. Hindi kayo allowed kausapin yung husband nyo. Siguro yung may ibang husband natutuwa. And the only time Esther can speak is when the king gets the scepter and points it to her. Di ba? May ibang husband, iniisip na, sarap nun, ano? Makakapagsalita lang ang asawa ko pag tinuro ko yung scepter. Pag ayoko na, hop. Okay, hop. Tama na. Those were the women. In fact, they say that during the Greek times, women were not second-class citizens. They were third-class citizens. Slightly higher than animals. Can you imagine? But because of Christianity, we have women rights. Women are elevated. Health. During the time of the Greco-Roman period, hospitals were reserved for military only. When you are weak, you are sick, you are dying, you can only go to the temples. That's why during the time of Jesus in Jerusalem, they go to the pool, di ba? Remember that story? When they are weak, they are sick, where do they go? To the pool. Because in the pool, they believe when the angel stirs the water, they can jump into the water, they get healed. Because there was no hospital during that time. Who advocated the establishment of public health and hospitals? The Christians. Because during the Roman times, hospitals were reserved only for military. But when the Christians came, during the time of Constantine, they advocated public health to help the poor and the dying to get medical treatment. Christians, that's the impact of Christians in the world. Education, diba? What are the top universities in America? Harvard, Princeton, Yale. Are you aware that all of these schools started out as seminaries? That is the impact of Christianity in the world. In fact, you know the motto of, the original motto of Harvard? The original motto of Harvard, when it was established, was Christo et Ecclesiae, which means for Christ and church. Today, ano lang ngayon ang motto ni Harvard? Veritas. Truth. Because Harvard is no longer a Christian institution. That's the sad reality. The world is dying, it's decaying. But that is the impact of Christians in the world. Arts. Beethoven, si Bach, they were strong believers in Christ. In fact, Beethoven was known when he writes a piece, when he composed a piece, he would put there for the glory of God. Of course, law. You have law. Today's law, if our law is patterned after American law, right? The American law or Western law, most of Western law, not Middle Eastern law, right? Western law is patterned after the Judeo-Christian principles, ethics. Today, murderers are put in jail. Why? Because God said, do not murder. Adultery is a crime. Why? Because God said, do not commit adultery. That is the impact of Christians in the world. So let me ask you a question. What is our part in this world? You know, Christians of history have retarded the decay of the world. And we praise God for that. But this is what Peter tells us. But you, again, the personal pronoun you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. So again, ito na naman, the verse kita naman, you alone. You are a chosen race. Pinili ka ni Lord. You are a royal priesthood. By virtue of you being a child of God, you are royalty. You are a priest. What does a priest do? He is an agent of God. He shares the word of God. That is who you are. Pwede mo sabihin, hindi man ako pastor. Hindi ganun yun. It is you. You know God's word. Jesus Christ is living inside of you, and you have the power to be salt and light. You are a holy nation. Therefore, the only way, the only plan of God to retard the decay of this world, that darkness will not overpower light, is you. It is reserved for the righteous, the holy, and the royal priests. That is the plan of God. There is no plan B. What are we supposed to do? You are a chosen race, you are a royal priest, you are a holy nation. What are we supposed to do? We are to what? Proclaim the excellencies of Him who called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. You know, Jesus is the light of the world. He Himself said, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. But Jesus passed on that light to us. We are what we call reflectors, or we are like the moon. Because a reflector is not the source of light, right? We are not the source of light. We only reflect, a reflector only reflects a light source. We are like the moon. The moon has no capacity. Pag nakita mo yung buwan, di ba? Ang kintab niya, di ba? Yung buwan, di ba? He's shining. But actually, the moon does not shed off light. The sun does. And the only reason why we see light in the moon is because it reflects the light of the sun. So therefore, the source of light is Jesus himself. We are only reflectors of that light. So that when the people see us, the world sees us, they see light. That light is passed on to us. Let me share you some verses. Philippians chapter 2, verse 14. This is what it says. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, so that you will prove yourselves to be blameless, innocent children of God. If you're a child of God, you do all things without complaining, without grumbling, without disputing. We must be above reproach in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. Yeah, like a dark world. Among whom you appear as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I will have reason to glory, because I did not run in vain or toil in vain. You know, again, Paul says in another book, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 4, you, brethren, are not in darkness. The day would overtake you like a thief, for you are all sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night nor of darkness, so then let us not sleep as others do, but let us be alert and sober. Colossians chapter 1, verse 13 tells us, He rescued us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son. And then Zacharias, prophesying about John the Baptist, this is what he said. You child, referring to John the Baptist, will be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go on before the Lord to prepare His ways, to give His people the knowledge of salvation by the forgiveness of their sins. So we are to share the gospel. We are to tell a dying world that they can be forgiven of their sins. Right? They need to place their faith in Jesus to be forgiven of their sins. And then verse 79 tells us to shine upon those who sit in darkness and the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace. You know, this is what you call a salt shaker, right? If you have a salt shaker like that, and it's just there on the table, and you don't use it, what happens? You know, it's useless, right? You have to get it. That's why you have the term, can you please pass the salt? Okay? If somebody asks you, can you please pass the salt? Nung pinasa mo, kinuha niya, lagyan na sa lamesa. Taka, anong ginagawa? When you give the salt shaker to that person, automatically you would see him, what do we do? He will pour it on his food, right? French fries, I don't know, egg, whatever. In other words, salt has to be dispersed to be useful. It should not retain in the salt shaker. But the truth is this, you know, a lot of us Christians, and sometimes, you know, I'm also guilty of this. We like to stay in the salt shaker. You know what I'm saying? We like to stay together. We don't want darkness. We don't want to be in the meat. Sabi, ang baho dyan, pastor, sa meat. That's rotting meat. I don't want to pahid myself on the meat. I don't want to go to the darkness. I want to be in the light. But what happens? When you are like that, you are like inside the salt shaker all the time. We are together. We like to do together. D group. Sunday service. Diba? Sunday service on Sunday. D group on the week. Mayroon mga prayer gathering. May mga pasal pa sa Tagaytay. Tayo na lang makakasama. Ano nangyayari? Hindi tayo nagiging effective sa mundo. Parang na lang tayo, sila sana makakasama. Wala silang pakialam sa atin eh. Pag termine naman yung non-believing world sa atin, when they look at, the world looks at us, sila makasama. Hindi man ako kinakaibigan ng mga yan. Sila na makakasama. So, ang mangyari, kailangan i-shake tayo ni Lord at i-pour sa mundo. You know, sometimes that's what I advise some persons. You know, some people would tell me, Pastor, I will resign from my job. Sabi ko, bakit? Eh, kasi yung boss ko, hindi okay. Medyo malabo. Sabi ko, bakit? May pinagawa ba sa yung hindi maganda? Hindi naman. Pero masama yung ugali. Hirap na hirap ako eh. Sabi ko, brother, pag-isipan mo muna. Kasi yung mga yan, some Christians, once they feel the heat, the world, because the world's values are different from our values. Once they feel the heat, they resign, they quit. And I tell them, and I encourage them, perhaps that's the reason why you are there. To be salt, to be light to your boss. So don't give up easily. Because Christians tend, ayoko na. Mag-a-apply na lang ako sa church kasi mabait si pastor. Akala lang nila yun. Di ba? Akala lang. Di ba? Doon sa ministry na lang ako makatrabaho. Puro Christian kasama ko. I don't want to work in the world. So that is, in fact, to work in the world is more noble. Why? Because that is the purpose of Jesus Christ. You are to be salt, you are to be light. Don't, wag naman tayo masyadong, okay naman na makasama tayo, di ba? Because the Bible tells us to encourage one another, to love one another. That is also important. But we need to be scattered from time to time. We need to go out into the world to be salt, to be light. Jesus said himself, this is his prayer before he left the world. This is his prayer to the disciples. He said, the world has hated them, but they are not of the world, even as I am not. In other words, we are in the world, but we are not of the world. And this is what Jesus said, I do not ask you to take them out of the world, but to keep them from the evil one. So our prayer to Jesus is to protect us from Satan. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. So what is Jesus saying? Don't take them out of the world. Some Christians, they think that the way for me to grow and develop is to get out of the world. You understand what I'm saying? That's why some monks, they go to monasteries. They go to the mountains. And in their mind, if I go to the mountain, I go to the monastery, my spirituality will grow. Contrary to that is what Jesus is saying. That is not the way to go. You must stay in the world. That is what Jesus is saying. They are not of the world, but they must stay in the world. As you have sent me into the world, I also, Jesus said, send them into the world. Hindi niya sinabing, I send them to the monastery. I send them to the mountains to meditate. Hindi yun sinabi ni Jesus. I send them to the world. So whether you like it or not, whether you like your company or not, your classmates or not, that's what Jesus wants you to do. To stay in the world. Because you are to be salt, we are to be salt, we are to be light. Now this is the problem. That's why we go now to the problem. The presupposition, the plan. Who is the plan? Ako. Di ba? You. You are the plan. Pag tinanong mo yung katabi mo, mukhang effective plan ba yun? Parang, Lord, parang hindi pwede. Kasi ito yung problema. Kasi Lord, itong plano mo, ito ang yung problema. Itong plano mo, hindi salt, hindi light. Mukhang suka. Because when we go into the world, we are supposed to be salt and light. Now, this is the problem. When we go into the world, we begin to belong to the world. Yun ang nagiging problema. So you go to the world, you want to be salt and light. Tapos yayain ka nilang uminom. Yayain ka nilang mag-party. Yayain ka nila sa mga gimmick nila. Soon, kasama mo na sila. Biglang sabihin mo, ay, taga-CCF nga pala. Ganun ba? Taga-CCF ka pala. Di ba? Hindi namin halata. Ganun ba? Christian ka pala. Di ba? Parang, hindi na naman, so, di ba? You get what I'm saying? That's the problem. The danger of failure. You go into the world and then you belong to the world. Because sin, you allow sin to enter your life and you don't allow the Holy Spirit to control you. And that's why there must be a healthy balance with being in the church. Because we need encouragement. We need mutual encouragement and going out into the world. Because if all you do is go into the world and you don't have mutual encouragement from the church, you know what will happen? Soon, you will imbibe the values of the world. That's why in our D12, what we did, the men, I asked them to select accountability partners. 1 or 2 accountability partners who they will meet regularly. And they will ask tough questions. Tough questions like, are you doing your quiet time? How is your thought life? Are you engaged in a relationship that you think is not okay? Yan yung mga tough questions. Because the men, I admit, they go into the world. You know, one of the things that, in my situation is not favorable, Most of the time, I talk to Christians as a pastor. But the men in my D12, most of them, they go into the world. And when you go into the world, you can get easily trapped by the world. And that's why accountability is essential. To ask them, are you okay? How is your thought life? How is your behavior? Are you being molded by the world? You know, J. Wilbur Chapman said, it's not the ship in the water, but the water in the ship that sinks it. Okay, so it's not the Christian in the world, but the world in the Christian that constitutes the danger. Okay, so the danger is when you have the world's values, you become part of the world. And this is what the warning, this is the problem. Look at what Jesus said. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. So what is Jesus saying? So it's kind of weird to think that salt will become tasteless because, salt can never become tasteless. But perhaps there's some ground for what Jesus is saying. Because during his time, salt production was not refined. And maybe during his time, salt can lose its saltiness. And when salt loses saltiness, what is Jesus saying? It is worthless. You throw it away. It is good for nothing. So what does that imply? A Christian who is not a salt in the world is useless as far as Jesus is concerned. It's not useful to me. I cannot utilize it. I cannot use it for my kingdom. Now, some Christians will think, I will lose my salvation. That is not the point of Jesus. The point of Jesus is this. For us to understand, look at a parallel verse in Luke chapter 14 for you to better understand what salt means. Luke 14. Large crowds were going along with him. Now, he's referring to Jesus. In other words, he was like a rock star. Para siyang Beatles, para siyang si Elvis Presley. Kahit saan siya pumunta, ang daming tao. Si Jesus. Why? Because he was healing people. He was performing miracles. And look at this, large crowds, look at the grammar, going along. He did not use the term follow. They were simply going along with him because siguro nag-aabang sila. Pare, abang tayo, gagawa ng milagro yan. Ayun, galing talaga, no? Kami yung kote, magagawa na naman, galing talaga, di ba? So may mga fans siya. Ang daming fans si Jesus. So when he noticed that large crowds were following him, look at this, he turned to them, the large crowds, this is what he said. This is what he said. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Now what does that tell us? Jesus is not a politician. Kasi ang politician, ganito, dami sumusunod sa akin. Mga boto to. Sige, tama pa kayo. Sabihin nila, hirap magsalita dito. Sabihin nila, Sir, kumanta ka naman? Okay, kakanta ako, di ba? Lahat gagawin para sa tao. Ganoon ang politician. Bakit? Para magkaroon ng boto. Jesus is not a politician. He turned to them and said, are you really serious in following me? Are you just going along for the ride? Are you fans or are you followers? So he drew the line. You want to follow me? You hate your family. Put me above your family. Yeah, this is what he said. Not only that, give up your possessions. If you want to follow me. Diba, kung politician si Jesus, mawala yung boto niya. You know what I'm saying? Sabi niya, none of you cannot be my disciple who does not give up all his possession. Jesus is saying, if you want to follow me, you must love me or be loyal to me more than your parents, your children. You must love me above them. You must be willing to give up all your possessions for me. So, have you ever asked that question? For example, you have a savings account. I don't know how much your savings account is. And Jesus tells you, why don't you give all your money to me? Have you ever experienced that? I mean, we have experienced that. But that is a test of loyalty. Now he drives home the point. Look at the next verse. Therefore, salt is good. But if salt becomes tasteless, if it has become tasteless, with what will it be seasoned? It is useless either for the soil or for the manure pile. It is thrown out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. When he says he who has ears to hear, Jesus is saying this is important. You know what he's saying? I am not looking for fans. I am looking for genuine followers. If you're not a legit follower, then forget it. Don't follow me. I don't want you hanging around here. That's what Jesus is saying. Genuine followers equals quality disciples. And quality disciples are salty disciples. Pag tikman mo yung sarili mo, ang alat mo. Kasi matagal ka na hindi naliligo. Hindi. But you are salty. Genuine followers equals quality disciples. And quality disciples are salt of the earth. Otherwise, if you don't fall under these qualities, these categories that he mentioned, you are useless to me. That's what Jesus is saying. You are useless to me. Don't even follow me. Huwag na kayo sumunod. If you cannot follow these prerequisites, these requirements, that's useful. Because only those who put me first in their life, who are willing to sacrifice their life for my sake, will become the salt of the earth. If you're not, then you will not be salt of the earth. You are useless. Why even follow me in the first place? There's a cost to following me. Let's go back to Matthew. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Now that's a very important statement. During those times, a city was on top of a hill. And during the night, when it's nighttime, the city has lights. So what does that imply? A city on a hill, on top of the hill, is very obvious. Right? Malayo pa lang, makikita mo, nasa taas siya ng bundok. At nighttime, it has lots of light. It's very obvious. It is very evident. So what does that imply? If you are a light of the world, it's very obvious. It is evident. Di ba? Kaya nga yung joke ko kanina. Obvious ba sa trabaho nyo na kayo ay light of the world? Is it obvious to the people around you? Or when you say, alam mo, nag-attend ako CCF. Ha? CCF ka? Parang, hindi obvious. Parang, or I'm a follower of Jesus. Not really, huh? Okay. Pero have you encountered that? I've encountered that when I was working. I never said anything. But one of the staff told me, Marc, Christian ka ba? Sabi ko, ba't mo na tinatanong? Sabi niya, iba ka eh. Iba ka magsalita. Iba ka sa iba, mag-conduct ng negosyo. Christian ka ba? Kasi sabi niya, yung asawa daw niya, nag-attend ng church. At para ikaw yung asawa ko. Sabi niya, ganun din ang attitude niya. Have you experienced that? Or have you experienced the opposite? Sabihin mo, ay, nag-attend pala ako CCF. Ha? Talaga? CCF? Paano nangyari yun? In other words, a city set on a hill, it cannot be hidden. It is obvious to everyone around that there is something different about you. And they sense it. Just like Dwight L. Moody. The barbers did not know him, who he was. Remember the story of Woodrow Wilson? But when he left the room, their minds were elevated. There was something different about this person. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Now, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket. It's so stupid, right? You light a lamp, lagyan mo ng basket. Imagine mo, bakit hindi ka parang ilaw? Lalagyan mo rin ng basket. Diba? It's not something that you do. But you put it on the lampstand so that it will bless others. It will give light to all who are in the house. In other words, don't cover your light. Yeah. Don't cover it. So let me ask you a question again. What do you do to cover your light? You know what we normally do? We are afraid. That's how we cover our light. We are selfish. That's how we cover our light. We are afraid that when we speak out about Jesus, people will reject us. And therefore, when that happens, you cover the light. You are afraid that people will get angry at you. Perhaps you might lose your job. And that's how you cover the light. Now, I'm not saying that sabihin nyo, alam nyo, kaibigan, kailangan tangkapin mo si Jesus. What I'm saying is this. Many of you have a testimony to share, but you don't do it. You are selfish. God has worked in your life, and you don't share it to others. because you are selfish. That needs to be brought out because that is light. What has God done in your life? Because sometimes, I ask people, I hear a good testimony and say, can you share that on Sunday? Ha? Ayoko. Good testimonies need to be shared. Because that is how we become light. I praise God for one of the pastor's wives. Because she made it her ministry. When she discovers good news done by Christians, she shares it in social media. She shares it. And then somebody asked, why do you do that? And she simply said, a good story done by Christ followers needs to be told. Because we are the light of the world. To share, go ahead, share what God has done in your life. But don't share it because you want to be popular. Don't share it because gusto mo maging ka. You share it because you want to honor God. You want to glorify God, not yourself. And that's why we go to the purpose. What's the purpose? Let me read this together, verse 16. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. So what is the purpose? The purpose is very simple. The glory of God. The reason why you let your light shine before men, before the dark world, because you want God to receive the glory. It's not you. And if you would allow something to be announced, a good deed to be announced, a good deed is something to be announced. That's what I'm saying. Some people, they are afraid. They will say, ayoko i-announce to. Sabihin nila, mayabang ako. But if it's for the glory of God, and God will be glorified as a result, Jesus is saying, and giving you permission, you share it. Because people would want to see lives changed, lives restored, so that God will get the glory. And if you don't share it, if you don't do it, you are more concerned with yourself than about God. In other words, Jesus is saying, if you're ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of you. And that's a warning. That is a warning. Colossians chapter 4, verse 6 tells us, let your speech always be with grace. What does grace mean? Grace means undeserved favor. So meaning, ibig sabihin, when you talk to somebody, it must be graceful. You know that the person don't deserve it, but you speak with grace. Diba, minsan tayo mga Kristiyano, puro katotohanan sinasabi natin, ikaw talaga, parati kang late, ikaw parati kang ganyan, ikaw parati kang ganyan. Diba, paano natin may impact ang mga non-Christians? Diba? The people who don't know Jesus. But you must be graceful in your speech as though seasoned with salt. Ano seasoned with salt? Pag nagsalita ka, ang sarap ng dating. Para siyang kumain ng buffet, di ba? Parang ganun. Ang sarap sa pakinggan. Sarap pa ng pakinggan sa tenga. So that you will know how to should respond to each person. You may ask yourself, Pastor, I don't know the Bible. I don't think I'm an effective witness. But even the smallest light can dispel the greatest darkness. So what is our message this morning? Live God's purpose. And I tell all of you, be salt and light. When you go back to the workplace, when you go back to the families, be salt and light. Retard the decay. Okay? Dispel the darkness. Because you are God's plan. Do you know that? There is no other. It is only you. Don't say, ikaw na lang. Ayoko, ako. It is you that God wants to use and no one else.